I'm Jennifer Bilbrey, and this is On Our Minds, a podcast and vlog about psychotherapy in Austin, Texas. Today, I'm interviewing Dave Kaplowitz. He's an Austin-based psychotherapist specializing in couples and group work. We'll talk about the unique way he works, and we'll also get to talk about narcissism. Dave, where I'd like to start today is talking about feelings. A very kind of stereotypical place to start as therapists. So what I want to ask about is how helpful it is to talk about feelings in therapy, but also how much resistance there is to that. And how, especially in the beginning, when you ask that question, there's so much stereotypes around a therapist asking, how are you feeling or what are you feeling? That I'm just curious about that and how you introduce that, how you talk about why it's important.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jennifer, because my belief is that most people that come to therapy because they're having difficulty dealing with difficult feelings and emotions.
Yes. Yeah, most of my clients struggle with this too.
Yeah. And so, people don't usually come into therapy thinking that is one of their problems. So how to introduce it really depends on the person, the couple, the group. The first thing I don't do is I don't ask how you're feeling. Because that is such a stereotypical question. It either evokes sort of dismissive, experiences, or most people when they think they're talking about feelings, they're really talking about ideas and judgments. Like, I feel that you're not a very good partner.
Right. Not I'm angry.
Yes. Yeah. Not I'm angry or I'm hurt or I'm mad or I'm sad or I'm lonely. Yeah. Right. So usually I find a way to get people more in the territory is I ask them, what's happening for you emotionally right now? I
feel like I need to write that down. That's a great way of saying that.
Something I've learned over time. The other thing I'll do is I'll wait for a moment when I think there might be an emotion that's emerging for them. They might, be starting to shed tears. Their voice might crack a little bit. They might be getting a little anxious. They might be getting a little annoyed. I mean, these are things that as a therapist, I'm very attuned to.
Right.
So I'll wait for that moment and I'll say, so it looks like you might be a little bit frustrated right now. Is that accurate? Sometimes there's a little bit of, leading the witness.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'll say, what's happening for you emotionally right now? Mm-hmm. And, over time, it really depends. And we'll introduce things like the core emotions, mad, sad, glad, afraid, scared, right? And then sometimes I'll talk some people that might be having some emotions, but that might not be on board with this whole emotion thing. I'll explain the function of emotions in relationships.
So talk more about that, because I can imagine if I'm a listener or viewer and not a therapist, I'm thinking to myself, why? Why is that important?
Yeah, and I think there's lots of reasons that we have, as humans, emotions have evolved, right, over time, why we have them, right? I think, certainly emotions like fear, survival instinct, right? If there's a saber-toothed tiger that's gonna, ready to jump on us, it's a good idea to run away.
Yes.
Right? So that's very, evolutionary. But I think, things like, the more vulnerable emotions like sadness and loneliness, hurt, right? And even anger. They're actually they can be very relational. And I think most of at least in our, 2017, our culture is I think the primary value of emotions is that's what enables us to have relationships. And I think when I'm working with couples and groups, I explain to people, most people, because of the kind of logical, positivist world we live in, they approach relationships the same way they might approach, their work or fixing a car or making a recipe, which is the logical way. But really, the way relationships work, it's totally based on emotions and the unconscious, 100%. So I'm very much of a pragmatist, right? And I explain it to people. It's like, that's the way if you want your marriage, if you want your relationship with your kid to get better, you better start feeling and speaking about your emotions, or else it's not going to work.
Because it's the fastest or best way to get to what might be unconscious, in a way, in a sense.
No, not really.
Okay.
No, I think it's. I mean, that's true, but there's other ways to get to the unconscious. But I think that's what relationships thrive on. That is the currency of connection. Right, that's what most of us want, is to feel connected to our partner, to people in our lives, right? And depending on who they are, we want to feel, different degrees of closeness and at different times. But closeness and distance are the function of emotions, how we're feeling inside and how we're feeling towards the other person.
So again, I think if I'm listening and I'm not a therapist, I'm thinking, how does my anger or my hurt or my loneliness help me in any way?
Yeah, well, let's start with loneliness, right? If we're lonely, that's a pretty good idea. It's a cue, right? Emotions, in one way, are sort of cues to help us understand our world and the world that we live in,
yes.
right? So if I'm feeling lonely, that's probably a good indication that I might want some company, right? And if I'm married and I'm lonely, right, that might mean that I just need to seek out my partner, and maybe I need a hug. But maybe there's something larger going on here. Maybe I'm in this marriage, in this relationship, where I never really feel met. I never really feel seen. I never really feel understood. And I might feel lonely, but I might feel mad about that, right? I might feel hurt. You'd rather be out with your friends than spending time with me, right? That's going to hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
And you can't, you as my partner can't fix that, can't help me with that. Unless you know about it.
Yeah.
Which is why it's not enough just to have feelings, right? But we have to put words to them.
So that being one of the main ways therapy can help, and help a couple.
That's the way I work. It's the way I work with people.
Yeah.
I work mostly helping people do something that's called progressive emotional communication.
Yeah.
And that the idea behind that is, I'm going to say what I'm feeling: mad, sad, glad, afraid, alone, lonely, hurt. Right, and a little bit about it, so that then you can respond and tell me how that's affecting you. Sometimes it might not be, pleasant, right? If I'm really mad at you,
yes,
right. But anger, when expressed and used constructively, which we don't have a lot of good examples for in our culture or in most of the families we grew up in, is actually very relational.
Can be.
Yeah, it can be, but usually it's very destructive. So that's a lot of my work. Is helping people be able to express their anger and their aggression constructively towards their partner.
Oh, you just used a word that I really want to talk about.
Which is?
Aggression.
Yes, one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, is it?
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
Let's talk about aggression.
Yes.
It's exciting to talk to somebody about it because it's one of those topics that we don't learn about, or I didn't learn about in school. I don't know any trainings that I've been to where that was a topic. I've learned from it from my own therapy. So talk about how important it is to be talking with clients about aggression.
Oh, it is essential. I mean, I think in relationships, all human relationships, it is typically the biggest problem. Either aggression, people throw things, they shoot each other, right? They hurt each other physically, right? They yell, they scream, right? But also a lot of people do is they hold it in, right?
Internalized.
And they internalize it, and that leads to another set of problems, right? And depending on how you look at the world, I think the biggest problem we have in the world and in our relationships is aggression, either not being able to express it or expressing it destructively. Right. Either by going into action, throwing things, yelling. Yelling is a kind of action. Screaming, slamming doors, leaving the house.
Yes.
Right. All of those things. Road rage. And one of the first things I do with people when I start working with aggression is I explain the difference between anger and aggression.
Oh.
Right.
Again, I'm having that. I wish I had a pen. Well, that's a good one.
Supposedly, this is being taped, so you can go back and watch this.
True.
Yeah. So what I explain to people, and this is a bit of an oversimplification, but it does help people understand, right? Anger is the emotion that we feel inside, right? I'm mad, right? The aggression is how we act on it.
It's acting it out.
It's acting it out in some way,
Yeah.
which can mean anything from raising your voice to throwing things to hitting somebody to everything in between.
Yeah.
Right? And most people, they experience those two things as one and the same. And they don't, they have no, the idea of being able to be angry and have a choice in the moment is very new and very liberating for people.
It is. It's almost relieving, I have experienced for people.
Yeah, and that's a lot of the work I do with people, allowing people to have their difficult feelings. Because I mean, anger, especially when I like to think of most emotions on a scale of 1 to 10, right? And anger, when you're in the 1, 2, 3 range, it's kind of irritation, frustration, annoyance, that kind of thing. 5, 6, 4 is kind of anger, but then when you get into rage, being irate. 7, 8, 9, those 9, 10, it's hard in those moments, how to deal with it in a way. And that's why usually can take a while in therapy to work with it, to work on that.
Mm-hmm. Is another way of wording what you're saying, tolerating being in that space of 8, 9, or 10? But just learning in the office that I can be at a 9.
And not really, and not tolerate it, not act out. That's hard. I mean,
well, what this makes me think about is how useful it can be to use yourself to help a client regulate that state. That if a client can talk about their anger at me, then we're really getting some. Then it gets exciting.
Yeah, that tends to be more advanced work.
Yeah.
With people is talking about anger towards the therapist.
Yeah.
But a lot of my training is to help me be more open and encourage my clients' anger towards me when I don't always do the right thing. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. And it's kind of part of life. And encourage people to be free expressing their anger towards me. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. I've certainly been a client who felt it difficult to express anger towards my therapist, but once I got it as a client, it was like every time I want to come in and tell you how much I hate you. It's so relieving that I have this person that I can be angry at, and they're still going to be there every week.
Yeah, and you just said something really important that I want to kind of springboard off
of,
which is the hate part.
Yes,
which is
hate.
The hate, which is another one of my favorite topics, right? Because hate is very difficult for people because it tends to be very black and white. Is once for most people, hate is not a feeling in the moment, but it's a state of where I've put you in this box where I hate you. Right, and that's it. We're done. Right, our relationship is over.
You have become all of that. Instead of just this one piece of you that I don't like. You are everything.
Everything, and
that's bad.
And you're in the bad bucket. And I can't like you. I can't love you. I can't care about you. Right, and the reality is in relationships, marriages, families, is you really can't have love without hate. Right? If I'm going to really love you and really care about you, there are going to be times when you're going to be so irritating to me, I'm going to hate you. Right? And that's another.
So liberating.
Yes, it's very liberating, but it's a very alien concept to most people. And so we have to work a lot in the room. Group is very helpful for that.